Now, according to International Finance Corporation Regional Director for Central and Anglo Africa, Dahlia Khalifa, unlocking domestic capital on the African continent is not just a one-size-fits-all strategy, it's also different strategies to raise and deploy funds and will be unique to each African nation. She spoke to Rise business correspondent Rotus Oddiri in Casablanca at the Africa Finance Summit. Let's have a look.
It is, of course, the Africa Financial Summit here in Casablanca in Morocco, put together by the Jeune Afrique Media Group, the International Finance Corporation, and the Kingdom of Morocco. The conversation has been about funding. How do you allocate or how do you mobilize domestic capital on the African continent from within the African continent and scale it across the continent? We have one of the partners of this summit in the form of the IFC, and that is, of course, Dahlia Khalifa, who is the Regional Director for Central and Anglophone Africa. Dahlia, great to have you. Thanks for joining us. So, look, with respect to the theme, I wanted to get your thoughts on the whole talk about trying to raise domestic capital and scale it. Should we be looking more towards reducing interest rates and reducing inflation to unlock domestic capital?
That's a great question to kick us off. And let's just parse that out and say all of these elements matter. It's not one or the other. So, and one is connected to the other. So if you are trying to reduce your interest rates, you're trying to reduce your inflation, you also need to be working on increasing your productive capacities so that people have more savings, more money that they can afford to spend. And when those things work in tandem and work right, then you're able to see a better macroeconomic environment. So that's essentially what you're talking about.
Right.
So when we say we want to mobilize capital so that it can be invested in productive capacities to create jobs, to give people income, to enable them to purchase the things that they need to make their lives better. So it's all related.
Yeah. Great. And look, the IFC, you all have been doing great work across the continent, funding so many initiatives. But is it realistic to try to get, unlock capital across the entire continent? There's so many different, here in Morocco, borrowing rates are much lower compared to in Nigeria or in Ghana. Is it a realistic initiative to try to get, to try to get something uniform across the continent, or just to acknowledge that, conditions are just different in each country?
Oh, but we do acknowledge that.
Right.
And in fact, that's the basis of what IFC does. Right, so we have a very much a country-based approach to what we do because it isn't one size fits all.
Right.
We talk about scaling, but scaling doesn't mean one size fits all. So we do have an approach in Africa where, the 54 countries, we have offices in about 40 countries already. Our footprint on the continent is almost 1,000 people. We are growing, not just in people, but also in our capital mobilization for the continent. Over the past 5 years, we've more than tripled what we've done here. Last year, we were able to mobilize $15.5 billion in 45 countries. So that's quite a bit. And we're looking to even exceed that this year. So this is not a one-size-fits-all approach. We understand that the needs of Nigeria are different than the needs of Ethiopia, are different than the needs of Egypt, different than the needs of Burundi. And that's reflected in the approach that we take. But having said that, we do know that there are some key areas where if you focus on, you're able to unlock capital at scale. And we're talking about Africa, and we have pillars or verticals of priorities, whether it is value-added manufacturing or agriculture or tourism, a much underlooked area of where Africa could be leading and going and growing. Agriculture, energy, these are areas where we know that you can create jobs and you can help lift lives across the continent.
Fantastic. I wanted you to weigh in on a bit of a debate that was sparked yesterday at the opening plenary, and with a number of panels that went. We saw your panel as well. Very great stuff. Ike Mokode, one of the chair of one of the largest banks in Nigeria, was saying that some of the illiquidity that we're seeing is akin to plumbing in a house, and he said it's not the pipes, it's more of the plumbers. Folks have been taking sides. Well, how do you weigh in on it? What do you think of what
Analogies are great.
Yeah.
And so the idea I think that he was alluding to is that policy and policymakers, regulators have a critical role to play in the ecosystem. This is essentially an ecosystem. And you have different elements of it. He was alluding to the pipes or the plumbers, but this is a very, and it's a good analogy. This is a very intricate and interrelated ecosystem when you're trying to raise capital and you're trying to retain capital and create value to create jobs. And so policymakers and regulators have an important role to play in terms of deepening and broadening the capital markets. Yeah. And it's essentially the actors in the capital market, the bankers in the room, the non-financial bank institutions, who are critical players in all this, and we all need to play our role, including DFIs and development financial institutions like IFC, have a role to play in order to make sure that that ecosystem is all functioning toward the ultimate objective, which is creating value and creating jobs.
See, I'm trying to keep count. You've mentioned jobs, I don't know, 5, 6 times. You're so focused on jobs, which is great, especially for youth. So I got to ask you about artificial intelligence. That's been a topic here. What do you make of how it could impact jobs? Does the various labor forces in the different African countries, do they have to upskill? Is it overhyped that AI could kill jobs? How do you see it all? How do you see it?
I mean, you're very good. You listen to me. I'm glad I'm on point, because the point, it's not just me. The whole World Bank Group is laser focused on job creation. And yes, AI is, if you look at it, you say, is this going to change the dynamics and the equation for jobs? The answer is yes. And in a continent like Africa, where we're expecting over the next 3 decades, 750 million new entrants into the job market, jobs has to be the main focus. There is no alternative here, right? And so when we say, what does AI mean for that? Let's look at agriculture, for example. AgriConnect, which is a new initiative that the World Bank Group is undertaking, is focused on how can we marry technology with agriculture to make sure that Africa has the food security and the food sovereignty that it needs in order to make sure that people have food, but not only food, but also are able to create value through agriculture and retain that value. So technology has an important role to play, whether it is making sure that we have good seeds, making sure we identify the best irrigation processes, how we can connect efficient energy use with agricultural outcomes. So in other words, it's not that we need to fear technology, we need to embrace it. And we need to embrace it in all of these verticals that we talked about. Mentioned agriculture. I mentioned slightly energy, but also in finance itself. Fintechs play a critical role to make sure that people are able to access finance wherever they may be in a country. And if you are able to take finance to people where they are, and take energy to people where they are, and make sure that they have the agricultural and the food security that they need, the future is going to be nothing but bright.
Optimistic notes to end things. Dahlia Khalifa, Regional Director, Central Anglo Africa, over at the IFC. Always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for talking to Horizons.